Hello, everyone. I think it's a bit hard to get everyone into the halls from the networking, but I think that once they figure out that we've started, they will realize what they're missing. It's my pleasure today to have a fireside chat with two amazing entrepreneurs and investors who I've had the privilege to get to know over the last couple of weeks, actually, both of whom have a very interesting experience in investing in emerging markets and fostering entrepreneurship in emerging markets. My pleasure to introduce Peter Kellner, who is the co-founder of Endeavor Global and partner at Richmond Capital, and Najam Kidwai, who is a serial entrepreneur and investor, and has had many exits that he'll tell us about, and was one of which is, one company that he has been involved with is real-time content. So I want to give them first a couple of minutes each to tell you about what they've done and a little bit of their view on the subject. So Naj, do you want to kick us off?
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Great to be here. Serial entrepreneur, so I started my first company at the age of 19, which was actually a company called CyberEye in the virtual reality space about 15 years ago. And had my first exit, made $1 million, did all the work, but only got paid $50,000. So I thought something was fundamentally wrong with that, and realized that being thrown in the deep end, you have to learn very quickly and learn about term sheets and things like that, and recruitment. I've been fortunate enough to be co-founder of a company called Nuance, which is a world leader in enterprise speech recognition imaging solutions. It's a company we took public in 1998 in the United States for a $2.5 billion market valuation, and today is a $1 billion software business. I was also co-founder of a company called American Information Systems, which was acquired by Exodus for $250 million. After that, I sort of semi-retired and became an investor. I'm a partner with a fund called Edge Venture Capital out of San Mateo, which is focused on wireless, RFID, and consumer internet companies, and we have about 10 investments. I actually moved to Dubai about a year ago and started investing in the region and working with people like Intel Capital, and I'm involved in businesses like InMobi, Anchor Free, Geran, Shupi TV, Raiden. That's it.
Excellent. Welcome. Peter, you want to tell us a few words about yourself?
Sure. So I'm sort of here in a dual capacity. I think the more important one is as a co-founder of Endeavor. But just briefly, my day job is I run a venture fund that's global in nature: China, India, U.S., Brazil. We're looking at the MENA region right now that does technology-enabled services, early growth stage opportunities. We're about 11 years old. Salesforce.com, Aquantive, Color Kinetics, Personify, Athleta are a number of our successful exits, and we currently own the largest ad network, mobile and online ad network in China, called Ad China, which we seeded as a 10-page business plan about 4 years ago. But the more important reason that I'm here is for Endeavor. Endeavor is an organization some of you may be familiar with. I co-founded it in 1997 in South America. We support, and I should say we've now grown across South America, Mexico, South Africa, Turkey, Jordan. The great Endeavor Jordan team is here. I'm actually on their board of Endeavor Jordan. We just launched Endeavor Lebanon in January, and Tarek Saadi is here, actually, I think, speaking in another room a little later today, or maybe here. We're about to launch Endeavor in Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, and grow from there. We support what we call high-impact entrepreneurship, and these are the men and women who are going to create massive opportunity, scale, jobs, wealth, and most importantly, inspire others. So if we think about the panel that preceded this, and the question was put to folks about what is the most important thing that you can do in terms of adding value, I agree with people who responded in saying there are lots of things. But I would say as Endeavor as an organization, what we do very, very well so far, now in our 13th year, is we first search and select for these high-impact entrepreneurs, but then we bring them mentorship, and that mentorship is absolutely critical. And finally, when they're successful, and many, many of them have been, they become role models for others to follow. And so being in our second decade of endeavor, we actually have our early entrepreneurs, many of whom I found when I moved to South America to start it, who are now the chair people of their countries. So you're seeing a whole cycle occur, and it's extremely exciting and gives us some strong optimism about the MENA region.
Excellent. Two clearly very, very impressive gentlemen. So the subject being entrepreneurship in emerging markets, which is what we are in. What do you really think is the biggest difference between entrepreneurship in emerging markets versus developed markets?
Nope.
I think education and human capital is very, very important, and the institutes around education. So when you look at Silicon Valley, you have Stanford, you have UCLA, you have Berkeley, you have a great education ecosystem that supports entrepreneurship and passion, and that allows people to actually go out and create businesses, right? I think infrastructure is very good, it's world class. You look at, like even in Lebanon today, broadband costs are extortionate, and it's very difficult for companies to actually get up and create a business in this part of the world. So I think infrastructure is very important, I think education is very important. Those are the sort of two key differences, I think.
Yeah, I would just reiterate the role of education as a key differentiator. At Endeavor, we have a very strong emphasis on education. We actually will not really set up in a country unless we have worked ourselves into the higher education system so that we can disseminate the stories and bring the entrepreneurs in the country and from other countries to the young people, mostly college age, some grad students, and demonstrate the possibilities. So at this point, we have almost 100 case studies on Endeavor and Endeavor entrepreneurs at Harvard Business School, Stanford, Wharton, Columbia, INSEAD, London Business School, and then in the countries in which we operate, like San Andres in Argentina and Católica in Chile, elsewhere, we have case studies as well. And that is very important because those role models can come to the class and demonstrate to these young people that it is possible. So the education and the dissemination of these stories and role models is absolutely critical. In the US, we have people like Steve Jobs, Anita Roddick, Bill Gates. I know it's all the usual suspects, but then
Peter,
we have...
Could I ask you, so can we specify the role of education here? Because we're saying education kind of broadly. What's the difference in education between emerging markets and developed markets, and how does that difference play out for entrepreneurs?
Well, I would say there's I'm going to make this up. I call it active learning. You know, at MIT and HBS and other colleges and universities, students are actually engaged in the process of company creation, innovation, ideation, understanding risks, and the like in the course of their training, their vocational and educational training. There's nothing like that in the emerging markets. That's one insight that I might have.
Naj, what can we... I mean, if this is a critical piece, what are we supposed to do?
I think governments have to take a lead, and they have to invest in those institutions, which is a challenge. But if you look at places like Dubai, for example, and the Maktoum Foundation that is now looking at targeting SMEs, they're looking at infrastructure like the Zayed University, and investing in entrepreneurship programs. I think things like Endeavor are making a big difference, and we have some portfolio companies that are actually part of the Endeavor program, and we find that the CEOs it's been an invaluable difference. So they get access to people like Bill Gates, Reid Hoffman, and others, which they're never going to get in an emerging market.
Sorry, I didn't...
No, so I was just going to say that they have an opportunity to have access to those types of people and institutions.
Yeah, and I just want one last point on this is at Endeavor we've created a virtual active learning experience. So we can offer our entrepreneurs wherever they are in the world, teams of students, not just in their own countries, but entrepreneurship labs at Stanford and Harvard and etc. So it's really a global phenomenon when you think about the transference of education and knowledge.
Okay, great. So another thing that we often talk about in the Arab web industry is about innovation and imitation. So a lot of the startups that are coming out are people say, oh, this is such a Me Too startup, or everything is a Me Too startup here. Where is the innovation? Do you think that's a problem? What's your take on this question?
I think it is a problem. My own fund will only invest in businesses that have IP in the United States, and that means they must file patents, for example. If you look at how many patents were actually filed in the region, it's probably less than 100 last year, while there are thousands that are filed across Europe and the United States. So, you know, that is a big problem, right? And when we look at businesses in this part of the world, there is a lot of photocopy models, but I think because the infrastructure doesn't exist necessarily to go create patents, there is a lack of infrastructure for people to understand how to create that innovation. And you know, it's coming out of Silicon Valley purely because of places like Stanford and UCLA, etc. So I think, again, you know, it's sort of government and education that really need to focus on that.
Peter?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I would just make an observation that, and I'm going to leave the whole concept of replication, localization aside because it's tired and everybody's addressing it already. I will say, though, in our own portfolio experience, we've had two companies that have defied all logic with respect to this. One is a mobile payments company that we started in Redwood City about 6 years ago that is growing across Africa right now rapidly, and it's because of Africa's unique kind of, if you will, regulatory environment, lack of infrastructure that has allowed for mobile payments to take off, M-Pesa and some others you know about. So there's an example of mobile payments taking off in emerging countries where in the United States, frankly, it's just not happening yet. The second one is we have a company in China that I mentioned earlier, AdChina, which is like DoubleClick meets AdMob, meets Equantive, meets Turn, meets Rubicon. It's just this incredible company. And they're doing some stuff in IP and behavioral targeting and digital media that does not exist anywhere else in the world. So I'm a big believer in the opportunity. I don't have investment in MENA, so I can't speak to it the way my colleague can. But I think it's very, very possible.
Well, a lot of those models are photocopied, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think innovation will come in time. And you know, we have a company called Raiden, which is the sort of Bloomberg of real estate, right? Real estate analytics. Nobody's doing that in this part of the world. And you know, inspired for an entrepreneur who was actually offered, you know, $5 million to quit his job and go and do that proposition with a large holding information company and turned it down. So $5 million is quite a lot of money for anybody, right? And to turn that down and go and build a business on the back of that in this region, out of Turkey and Dubai, is a great thing, and hopefully, you know, they will see a very good exit.
But so I do think that both of you have kind of invested in some of these companies that are Me Too's or localizations of successful business models. Have these companies not created a lot of value? I mean, that's how I feel about it.
No, sorry, no, you go ahead.
No, you, please.
So no, I think they have created a lot of value, right? You know, we have a great business in Jordan called Jairan. And you know, you have to look at when you invest in a business, what it becomes. And actually in our fund, we have this ethos that we don't really invest in business plans. We invest in people we know and 1 degree of separation, because our experience has actually taught us that what you invest in and what it becomes are two very, very different things. So we've actually found that, you know, companies like Jairan, who started, you know, a number of years back, with a model originally as an ISP and then migrated to that to do sort of blogs and community work, and now have migrated that model again to focus on developing city-based portals for the region. So one of the key things is that as long as people are moving, they move with the market, they realize what they're doing maybe is not working or the market is not accepting it, and then they develop applications to actually address a market need. And you know, we're very happy with companies like that because they're trying to figure it out. Nobody has all of the answers. A lot of the people in the region are first-time CEOs. They've not done it before. They're learning on the job. So they really need people that can actually help them. It goes back to mentorship, give them guidance, have board members who can actually help them figure out what they need to do, how to go. Don't think local. You can be global, right? We live in a world today where we have real-life examples of companies breaking out, and we need more examples of success, right? You know, people like Sami Tukan, there's only 1 or 2 of those in the region. We need tens of those to create an ecosystem for, you know, these companies to say, it's all right doing a Me Too. There's no problem having a Groupon equivalent or a LinkedIn or anything like that if it caters to the local taste. And I think the other thing is Arabic content, right, which is severely lacking in the region. So if we're developing applications in Arabic, like Shufi TV, like Jiran, this is all good for the region.
Peter?
No.
You want to say anything?
No.
Great, okay. So maybe just a bigger picture question then. So the world is globalizing rapidly. We're seeing, you know, you guys have invested in China, in South America. Do we see that, do you think that Silicon Valley will remain the hub of web and mobile entrepreneurship? Or do you think it'll become more globalized? I mean, what's the potential for global companies coming out of emerging markets?
I think it's massive. You know, I'm involved with a company called InMobi, which is the largest independent mobile ad network in the world, which is actually headquartered out of India. And, you know, AdMob, which was acquired by Google about a year ago for $750 million, started that business focusing on developed markets. And InMobi decided to do that in emerging markets. And today, you know, we deliver over 32 billion mobile impressions. The likelihood is going to be the first billion-dollar company in India, right? That will list. So that's amazing, actually, and that's coming out of emerging markets. So, you know, I think that the world's power is definitely shifting. Entrepreneurs are all over the world. They have tools that allow them to build technologies and applications anywhere. You don't have to be in the United States. And I think one of the things that people are getting very smart at is sales and marketing. People have figured that out, that, you know, this is not a US or a European phenomenon. They can do that from anywhere. And so I'm very bullish on that. I think, you know, there are companies here that truly have an opportunity to be game changers in China, in India, in the Middle East. And entrepreneurs, you know, I think there was a startling statistic that a year ago, $800 billion of wealth was created in Silicon Valley, and 43% of that wealth was actually created by people of expat origin. So that's huge.
Yeah, no, I'd completely agree with that. I would just add the obvious, which is for it to happen, there has to be a reduction in transaction costs, a massive reduction in transaction costs for companies to get started. Labor laws need to be changed so you can hire and importantly fire people and create much more velocity. The problem is, let me just point this out. I am so excited to see all of you here today because when we started Endeavor in 1996, there was nothing like this. There were no conferences, there were no incubators, there were no accelerators, there were no investment funds, angels, and frankly, even entrepreneurs in South America. And within about 3, 4, 5 years, it just literally transformed. Okay, yes, it was assisted by the internet explosion, but we actually kept growing right through the crises of the bubble popping. And so when I look at this crowd today, I think to myself, wow, all the ingredients are here that did not exist in South America in 95, 96. So it's got to happen in the Middle East. It has to happen in the next couple of years. But it's only going to really happen until the velocity equation changes. And so for the regulators or influencers, influential people in the audience here, if I can put a bug in your ear, you've got to look at the labor laws and look at the transaction costs and make it. It can't take me 6 months to set up a company, and it can't take me a year to close it down or have to pay people who are not effective employees huge severance or find them jobs. And most importantly, I can't be penalized for failing. Yeah. If you penalize me for failing, or if that is a cultural phenomenon that persists in the region, it's not going to happen in the region.
Okay, great. I'm just going to take 2 questions from the audience because we're running fairly behind schedule. So, questions?
We've seen a lot of good ideas here in the region. Do you think entrepreneurship is still going in the right direction, or are we heading towards clones and mimics? I mean, if you look at the deals concept by itself, you know, the clones of Groupon, you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So do you still have belief that the region is ahead for good entrepreneurs and good ideas, or are we just against mimics and clones?
That's a great question. Look around you, right? There are some great ideas. I think it is going in the right direction. Maybe slower than we would like, but definitely going in the right direction. I think it's events like this. There was an event last year, Celebration of Entrepreneurship in Dubai, which was run by Braj Capital, which was also fantastic, a gathering of over 1,000 people to come and talk about entrepreneurship, businesses. There are now a lot of funds that are focused on SMEs, and people like Rashid's company with N2V and others that are doing a great job in helping build that network and inspiring people, giving them motivation, the ideas. And you know, there are a lot of ideas. And again, as Peter said, some of the cultural activities of you know, failure is viewed upon as a negative and stigma. I think that's going to hopefully change. And as that changes, people will leave the public sector and hopefully go out and create great companies. In this part of the world, we have to create millions and millions of jobs for people. You know, when you look at the markets in like Egypt and Tunisia and all the change that's going on, that change is being driven because people can't earn a living. And the only way you can earn a living is hopefully, you know, SMEs creating jobs. So I'm very bullish on the region. I think there is a huge opportunity, and I think we should all go for it, and I'm delighted to be a part of that community.
I have nothing to add. I agree.
Okay, my question goes to Mr. Kellner. Just in the somehow absence of an integrated or a homogeneous regulatory environment for mobile payment and mobile banking applications, you have seen the absence in Africa or the ease of regulatory environment to allow mobile payments as an opportunity. How do you look at it in the Middle East or within the Arab states where we have seen some countries have taken steps in that regard, or central banks have taken steps, and some other countries are reluctant just to regulate, whereas there are a lot of companies who have already started with mobile applications and mobile payment systems, and they are startup companies as well. So are you ready to invest in this region and while there are no regulations yet or no homogeneous systems or frameworks?
So I think this question was addressed earlier in the last panel, in that there are some significant barriers in the banking sector. Look, mobile payments is a catch-all, okay? There's a lot of different types of mobile payments. My company, OboPay, does P2P, which actually requires that we have interoperability with the banks, with the telcos and the like. We can't come to the large parts of MENA right now because it's not feasible. The regulations are not conducive. Trust me, it took us in India, it took us 15 months in India to get the license from the RBI, the Bank of India. We finally got it. Now we're rolling out Union Bank, Yes Bank. It's actually taking off. It's a beautiful business, actually, because you're empowering people with cell phones who don't have bank accounts, and if you just give them the utility to see what they start doing, to see the use cases that we see now in India and in Africa, I mean, it's such a powerful job creating technology. But until these regulations get less cumbersome and burdensome, it's just not going to happen. But again, mobile payments is a very broad spectrum of types of applications.
Great. Thank you very much to the panelists.
Thank you.